If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Well, Holly, let's go to the Ivy Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard hotline and bring in our next guest.
Yeah, John Markowski is the author of an award-winning blog and 2 books. He also contributes to a number of other web publications. His gardens have been featured multiple times on the Fine Gardening website. He's a passionate writer and gardener. Welcome to the program, John.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us on the program and share some of your gardening wisdom with all of us.
I look forward to it. Hopefully it's wisdom. It's most of the time it's more frustrating, but I look forward to it.
Well, sometimes, John, and I tell Holly this a lot, we get tired of hearing ourselves say the same thing over and over, but to some individuals it's magical because it's information that they've told us, man, I wish we would have knew that 20 years ago. It would have made our lives so much easier. So we maybe are not familiar with how knowledgeable we may be when it comes to certain topics.
Very, very true.
So how did your passion for gardening begin? Tell your story so all of our listeners can get on the same page and understand your background a little bit.
Sure. It doesn't start like I know so many others do, where as a child they had a grandparent who was a gardener, or parents who were gardeners, and they found that interest at an early age. For me, it didn't really exist. I did a lot of the cutting of the lawn, trimming of the lawn, cleaning up the leaves, that type of thing. But the idea of having my own garden or growing plants didn't really exist. And then when my wife and I were first married and we bought our first house, I quickly realized that I had a complete lack of ability to do anything inside the house. I couldn't fix anything. I wasn't very much of a DIYer, and I wrote about this in my book, and it's completely true. I was trying to hang a shutter on our house, and I fell off of the ladder. I fell onto our car and onto the ground, and I sort of had a mini meltdown, frustrated with the fact that, all right, I can't, I'm newly married, I have this new house, and I can't do anything around there. And almost magically, I sort of looked around outside and thought, wait a minute, I can't do too much damage out here. If it's digging a hole and planting, I can't blow up the house or anything. And it literally started like that. I remember going out and buying a holly to plant in our front bed, and it literally grew from there. It was kind of finding that passion, and while it didn't explode at first, it was just a slow build. So it would go from there. I was buying a book. From there, I was buying a more detailed book. I was starting to, do plantings in the morning before work. I was sneaking, books at work to read about perennials, and it kind of just slowly grew from there. One of the books I like to say that really pushed me to the next level was it's the Well-Tended Perennial Garden by Tracy DiSabato Oust. I think that's how you say her name. Which really got into the detail about how to tend to perennials, from pinching to cutting back to winter interest, and that really took it to a whole nother level, to the point that it became an obsession.
That's great. Now, you like to grow perennials, obviously. More specifically, why is that? And do you have some favorites, ones that might be good for new perennial growers to try and make an attempt with?
Sure. I think with perennials, what I quickly found was that it was a good investment. I like the idea that they came back year after year. So, we're planting annuals, and you're getting that burst of color, you're getting the flowers. It was kind of at the end of the season they were done. I like the idea of, if I was going to invest my time, I would be paid off for years to come. And then what I also started to find out with perennials was that they provided, really a year-round interest. I liked seeing them first emerge in the spring. There was that excitement of seeing the green breaking out of the ground. I enjoyed just seeing the foliage grow. And then it would flower, and then even after flower, I'd like seeing dry seed heads, and even certain perennials look good into the winter, covered in snow. And so I just started to realize that was what I enjoyed the most. And then over the years, what I found is that each of the perennials kind of had its own story for me personally. You know, I remember where I bought it, where I first planted it, when it first bloomed, that type of thing. So I enjoyed the story behind perennials, and it's really continued to this day. In terms of some of my favorites, I live in Zone 6B in New Jersey, and I live in a somewhat rural area, so we have a lot of deer. I'm on about 2+ acres, and when we first moved here, I was naive to think I could grow anything I wanted. Quickly realized the deer eat everything, and that we also have really poor drainage where I'm at. We have a high water table, so they don't drain well. So it took me some years to realize, you know, you can't force something in that doesn't work there. So I just kind of went with what the conditions, you know, what plants would work in those conditions, which usually ends up being native perennials. So some of my personal favorites, I love Joe pieweed. I probably have 10 to 12 different cultivars of that, and it's, you know, again, low maintenance. I have, you know, some that are 2-3 feet tall, others that get upwards of 7 feet tall. They draw in the butterflies and the bees and even the birds like mad, so it's always entertaining, and they look great all season, all the way into winter. So they're definitely a favorite. I love bee balm. I know for some it may be a little aggressive, but for me, having a large space to work with, I love the fact that it fills in quickly. Because the flowers smell, the deer usually don't eat them. Again, draws in all sorts of creatures, which is always entertaining. There's always activity going on in the garden, which I love. So that's another personal favorite. If I had to pick one, though, I think right now, if I had my top, it's Amsonia. I think it's also known as Blue Star, and that's fantastic because it, you know, has blue star flowers in spring, but then it just has this sort of this billowy texture as the summer goes on, and then in the fall it's spectacular. It's a yellow orange and kind of goes well with other fall blooming perennials. So that's one of my personal favorites, and all the ones I mentioned so far require virtually no maintenance. I leave them up all winter and just cut them down in spring.
And that's the thing with the perennials, it's no maintenance, whether it's a vegetable or fruit or in your case, flowers like that. They come back year after year with very little maintenance. Is there one that you were like, ugh, not really impressed with this? I really thought I would like this, but the conditions were all good, but it really was a very disappointing experience for you?
Let me think about that, because I've tried so much. I believe it or not, I tried hostas when I first got here and quickly realized not only did the deer eat them, but I don't personally like them very much, and I know that's kind of I feel like gardeners fall on one side of the fence on that one. I do struggle with taller perennials and being able to keep them upright. Peonies, which I love, are always tough because, you know, once they're in bloom, they tend to fall over and they don't look great if you're trying to keep them propped up. So while I have some and I appreciate their flowers, I find them kind of frustrating because there's a very small window of when they're actually impressive.
Okay, great. So now we love to mulch, Joe and I love to mulch, and you have a funny story about mulch and how it's really been part of your family. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. When I was younger and maybe in early years of high school, I remember my dad sort of discovered mulch. I wouldn't say that we really had a garden at our house, but it was definitely well landscaped. And so I think he discovered, you know, mulch could hide areas where you couldn't grow grass, and it could suppress weeds, and it looked nice, and it kind of smelled nice. And so it kind of turned into an annual event where we'd have these massive quantities dumped in front of the house, and we'd have wheelbarrows, and we'd spend the entire day mulching the entire yard. And what's really funny is as the years went on, we continued to do so. And then as he got older and I got older and moved out and was married, it became more difficult for him to do. And I think to sort of crown the entire process, he declared a day to be a mulch party. And so we all came, and they made us food, and myself and my brother-in-law, we mulched the entire day, and it was sort of the end of an era of mulch. And I wrote about this in the book. I still think of that day very fondly because my wife was pregnant with our first child at that point, and I'll always remember coming into the house. It was super hot. We were all drenched after mulching all day, and was able to see. It was almost like the realization of the fact that we were going to have a child very soon hit me, and in fact, he was born, I think, 3 days later. So I would associate mulch with the birth of my first son. But it was definitely a big part of our landscape growing up, and I can remember getting down on my hands and knees, and we filled in every single area that was possible. So it was, still has a place in my heart.
Well, I'm glad that you still like to mulch. My grandfather, as a child, he was forced to pick wash tubfuls of blackberries, and to this day, he will not eat a blackberry anything because it would just ruin him for life. So I'm glad that you still like to deal with mulch, even with that, growing up that way.
For sure.
Your newest book, Seed, Grow, Love, Write, isn't just about gardening. It's not a gardening-specific book. What is the book really about?
I guess you could say it's sort of a memoir, and what I found was once I started gardening, I discovered that I liked photography, and then I discovered that I think I might like writing about my garden. So I started a blog to sort of just capture the day-to-day of the garden, the good and the bad and the ugly. And the more I posted on the blog and the more I started writing, I sort of rediscovered this joy that I had of writing, because I went into college as a journalism major, and I wrote a lot in high school, and I sort of lost that writing thing. So the book kind of goes through, it's maybe 40 plus short stories of my life and moments that sort of impacted me and led me to where I am today. From cleaning up the leaves with my dad to the mulch story we just talked about to specific moments in high school, through the discovery of gardening. I mean, it's the common theme, I think, running throughout was how I discovered the joy of gardening and where it took me. And so while it's not a gardening book in that I kind of hope it shows others, here's how you can find your passion. Here's how I did it. I'm not outlining specific steps to be able to do so, but I'm hoping by telling these stories and recounting moments from my childhood and so on and so forth, it kind of gives people a jolt to take a closer look at their own lives and see, oh, you know what, this is something I enjoyed when I was a child, and maybe I still like that. And it's kind of taking baby steps to get where you want to go rather than trying to find that big aha moment.
Definitely. So how can we find out more about you?
Well, the book is on sale on Amazon right now. Like you mentioned, the name is Seed, Grow, Love, Write. I also have been blogging for probably 8+ years now at obsessiveneuroticgardener.com. It's a lot of words there, and I don't know that I love the URL I chose, but it was too late. And then I also just recently created an author Facebook page that I'm trying to get going, just John Markowski, author. And really what I'm finding is I kind of have diverged into two different paths. I'm writing about my garden, taking pictures of the garden, but I also find that I'm enjoying writing about, beyond gardening. I'm writing about being a father, writing about being a husband, and just sort of writing about getting older, that type of thing. So I'm kind of gone off in two different paths there, but those are probably the best places to find me.
Well, John, we greatly appreciate you taking time to out of your day to share your gardening information, knowledge, and stories with Holly, myself, and all of our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.